And
the recording is now started.
Okay, and we've also had to include some terms that are generally considered offensive. So we're going to talk about that too. All right, so here we go. So the ṱKhomani San are some of South Africa's first peoples. They were dispossessed of their land in the Kalahari. It's this blue bit here. Can you see my mouse moving?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this bit, which is in the Northern Cape, and eventually it ended up as the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. Transfrontier because it goes over into Botswana, so it's all of that. Now, in the late 1990s, they succeeded in their historic land claim case. And because they used to speak the endangered language Ngu, those who are still able to speak it played a very large role in the land claim case. And they've started to revive the language and teach it to their children. So BVF 41, which is better known as the ṱKhomani San Hugh Brody collection, is one of the audiovisual archive collections. And we hold it because we have the facilities to ensure that the original material is safely stored in the correct climatic conditions and that we're meeting archival standards. The entire collection has been digitized and a website and showcase were created some years ago. It was partly to make the material available and accessible to researchers, but it was also intended to ensure that the community would be able to access heritage. This image is so Hugh Brody has been working with the ṱKhomani San since 1996. And he was instrumental in putting together the research that enabled the community to succeed in their land claim. His team included linguists Levi Namaseb and Tony Trail, as well as Nigel Crawhall, who conducted most of the interviews and many others over the years. And as I said, the linguistic component was particularly important. And because the research team had audio recordings of some of the elders' grandparents, their ability to identify the speakers and translate what was said was one of the key lines of evidence used to prove that this was the same community that had been displaced all those decades before. So photographs of some of these deceased relatives are also in the better known Blake and Lloyd collection. And the extensive material put together by the research team includes digital items, physical items, and so many different kinds of media. They made the film Tracks Across the Sand about the land claim and the community, and that was that they used the material that we now hold at UCT for that. So our original website failed to meet the community's needs. Both the underlying software and the way the website was designed resulted in something that was far from user-friendly and made it impossible to link the various parts of the collection together cohesively. Additionally, the entire website was in English, which virtually none of the community speak. They mostly speak Afrikaans. So to address these issues, we embarked on a project to re-envision the website on a new platform that would allow us to make use of linked data so that the collection could be viewed as a cohesive whole. And to do this, we worked in collaboration with Kerry Jones and her team at African Tongue. They are the linguists responsible for the transcription and translation of the many interviews. And there's an example here. So the blue is the Afrikaans original, green is the Ngqu original, and then you have the English translation in black. So through Kerry, we were able to get feedback directly from the community. And so we were able to involve them in the metadata creation. And so we have more detailed and more accurate metadata. Okay. While preparing all of the material for the new website and making sure that everything is either already digitized or is re-digitized to international standards so that we can digitally preserve it, we also started on an itemized finding aid. So this example is of the Blake and Lloyd collection. But it's what we're going to end up, it's the same sort of thing as what we're going to end up with. And our digital finding aids that form our online repository will be tied to our digital preservation system when that gets launched. And that will enable us to automatically place low resolution access copies of the items in the repository. That way, researchers can determine whether or not they're actually looking at the right item and if they actually want to come visit and see the original. It also means, because it's tied to the digital preservation system, that it's much easier for us to link the low-res copy on the finding aid to the high-res copy when someone wants to see that. And we can also easily link it to the website that will be more of a showcase. Yeah, because finding aids are not useful to the community generally. So cataloging African material with the US-centric Library of Congress subject headings can be very frustrating. I used to be a cataloger, and it is very frustrating. And finding the accurate term can be quite difficult sometimes. So in this example, we had a keyword in the transcript that was dispersed people. And the Library of Congress subject headings had displaced persons as the closest to that, but that redirected to refugees, which, as you can see, Kerry objected to because refugees cross international borders and these were internal refugees. Her other suggestion of land dispossession wasn't possible with the Library of Congress. So I suggested some other possibilities, and we eventually settled on internally displaced persons. And where possible, we've tried as much as we can to use the Library of Congress headings because they're used by so many people. So it makes it much easier to search because a lot of researchers are already used to searching using those terms. But for some things, we had to create local terms. So for Indigenous and traditional knowledge systems, the Library of Congress preferred term was ethnoscience. And Kerry and I agreed that this was the sort of term that would only alienate the community. And in this case, we chose to go with a local term as the controlled vocabularies available to us didn't meet our needs. So the keywords assigned in the metadata of these items plays a really important role in making them visible to people searching the internet. And a lot of our very African material cannot be described using vocabularies from the Northern Hemisphere. So one of the major outcomes of the ṭKhomani SAN project will be a vocabulary filled with local terms that we can turn to when the standard vocabularies fail us. For example, we have fasters, which is a group of Southern Africans. There are a few communities. So we went with the more general term of fasters rather than Rehoboth fasters. Dune grass and dune streets are not the kind of terms that you're gonna find because most people don't live on sand dunes. Or yeah. Kliptaal is an Afrikaans word. Klip is stone, taal is language. And in this case, it was specifically a dialect of a San language that they were listening to that had been recorded decades previously, that they identified as being called Kliptaal. And because that is the name of a dialect, we need to have that in our vocabulary, even though you're not going to find it in an international vocabulary. Our intention is to continue to build on this because at the moment our vocabulary is ṭKhomani centric. So as we work through our other collections, we're eventually going to have a robust Southern African vocabulary that will ensure that our material is accessible both to international researchers and to the local communities whose heritage this is. Now, useful keywords include the names of the people that are interviewed, names of people that appear in images or footage. And Kerry consulted with the community to ensure that each person was identifiable, regardless of how they were referred to in the interview or in the footage. So in this example from our name spreadsheet, the name keyword in this first column, Kaisbro, she chose that to be her recognized name. It happens to be her second surname and her first name. But she also has another surname that she might be referred to by. She has a traditional name, she has a nickname, she has a house name, and she has an other name. Not all the people mentioned have all the different names, but a lot of them are referred to in multiple different ways through the interviews. So having names as part of our local vocabulary where you can put in C references so that if you type in the one name, you get directed to, so if you type in Kais Kasi, you get redirected to Kaisbro, which is great and perfectly ordinary as vocabularies go. But some of the names include offensive or derogatory terms. And now some of these, Auntie Courtneck is Auntie Short Neck, which is not the worst thing to be called. Vet Piet Kleinman is Fat Pete Short Man or Small Man. Vet Cook, just above him, Vet Cook is a kind of syrupy pastry. Jan Amon has a slur for his middle name. And the other four names, well, including Vet Cook, those four names share the K word. It's kind of the South African equivalent of the N word in America, and it's legally considered hate speech. And people have been fined and jailed for using it, but the individuals or their descendants have said that these are the names they want to be used in our vocabulary. If someone refers to Vet Piet Kleinman by his real name, which I think was Klaas Kleinman, he wants it redirected to say Vet Piet Kleinman, which on the one hand is great, and we have to respect their identities, but on the other hand, it's kind of problematic to have the University of Cape Town putting up racist terminology as someone's name. So in order to handle this, we consulted with the university's lawyers, because we can't not use those names. In some cases, it's their legal surname, but it's the name that their friends and family used for them, and it's the name they want to be known by. So we don't really have a choice. We have to respect the community and use the names that they have chosen. So we consulted with the university lawyers to draft a statement that we will include in the metadata, in the finding aid, on the website, pretty much everywhere, to make it clear that it's not because we think that, you know, these are appropriate terms to use. It's because this is how they want to be known. And yeah, and in some cases, it's because, you know, it's included in the transcript because that's what the person said. We can't go back and change history. We just have to, you know, point out that we know better now. So the growing local vocabulary is not the only way in which we'll continue building on this collection. We're gonna send static copies of the website along with digital versions of the entire collection in a few of the public libraries in the Northern Cape, so that the communities can access their history, because it's all very well building this lovely website, but a lot of the community does not have internet access, so they'll never see it. So what they can do is they can get to their local community center or their local public library and access their heritage there. And they can then use their heritage to teach their children. They can teach the language, they can teach their history, but at the same time, it's also available to researchers and other interested parties. And so this is a model of community engagement and involvement. that we hope to extend to our other collections in the future, because it's their heritage, it's their stories, and they should have a part in how it is represented and made available to others. And yeah, our mandate is to preserve the records so that they can continue to access their heritage. And I think I went too fast, but I am done.
You did great. Thank you very much. That was very insightful. Sorry, I forgot to put my video on. Thank you very much. And would you mind if we open the floor to any and all of our colleagues to please ask questions and interrogate you very academically on what you have just presented to us? Thank you very much. Anybody, please speak.
I do have a question, especially the community engagement. How did you actually, can you give us, how did you actually develop those relationships? Was it already in place because of them giving the collection to you, or how did you start making those connections? Because I think that's fabulous that you've really connected the community to these records.
Andrea, I can give context if you would like.
Okay, good.
So first of all, I just wanted to say, Andrea, thank you. That was really, really wonderful. My name is Michal. Was in touch with Dion, and I just want to thank you guys for having us this evening, well, this afternoon as well. I just wanted to kind of add, sort of to give you a bit of context in terms of your question, Brenda. And also just to make a couple of also additional points around the project. The project was sort of developed and initiated, and we sort of proposed this in 2019. Andrea joined the Special Collections Department the year before, and I joined in 2019. I'm Andrea's manager, so Andrea. But anyway, the point is that we basically developed and proposed this project with working with the Digital Library Services Department, which is also in the libraries, as well as with African Tongue. Before us, African Tongue had already been involved with the libraries a few years before with a round of funding. Some years had gone by, and we were approached by Dr. Kerry Jones in early 2019 to pick up on the project. Initially, the project was brought to, the reason that we have this project is the collection was handed over as a sort of permanent deposit with a custody agreement by Hugh Brody. And what was a different iteration exists now, but the South African SAN Council, essentially it was, we've got this agreement, but it's sort of Hugh Brody had represented it, and essentially we engaged with him around that, as well as with Kerry Jones very closely. She is an amazing academic and an activist scholar, I would say, who has spent quite a lot of time traveling in the Kalahari. I mean, she's done some very major projects around the revival of languages and the preservation of those languages through her linguistic work. But the digital curation project that we set upon was pretty much because, you know, the collection was handed over to us, let's say, I think it was 2012, 2013. And this website that Andrea alluded to, which we don't really speak about so much, because it was, you know, in the sense that it was great to have it. It was better than not having it, but it very quickly became obvious that it was insufficient. So we started this project in response to a lot of concerns that were raised by the community about what happened to the collection, where's the collection, and we felt the need to prioritize this because, you know, if not now, when? I think the other thing to note is at the time of the project, there were 20, I think Andrea said at 25 speakers of NU, and now there is 1 or 2. So, you know, it's the same as with other, you know, cultural revival, you know, linguistic revivals. It really is very much around the very reality that these languages can go extinct. I think another thing I just wanted to say is this project was done almost entirely under lockdown. You know, we met weekly. I think it was intensive work. I was thinking during the presentation, this is one of the best things that came out of my lockdown. So, you know, I think it's really amazing to revisit it, because unfortunately over the past year and a bit, we have had to pause the project. We haven't actually been able to actively work on the project since April 2021, because I don't know, I assume people know, everyone knows, but that the Jagger Library where we were housed was destroyed in the fires. So we actually had to place the project on hold. And I think another thing I wanted to mention about Andrea's work is, while I was running around with a hard hat, Andrea was working with Kerry to issue a statement to the community, because of course they don't have internet. And we wanted to make it very clear that if they heard that there was a fire, that the library burnt down, that they knew what, you know, we wanted to be able to hear from us first, that essentially the collection had survived. It wasn't in the basement. It was sitting in various people's living rooms and home offices, and it had all been digitized. But unfortunately, Andrea showed the finding aid of the Blake and Lloyd collection. And unfortunately, several boxes containing photographs of the ancestral ṭKhomani San community who had been interviewed by by William Blake and photographed by his niece, Dorothea Blake. Unfortunately, those photo albums were destroyed in the fire. We had digitized quite a number of them for this project, but there are unfortunately some folders we didn't. So we've now actually motivated to complete and prioritize the digitization of that entire collection with the Center for Curating the Archive at UCT. Sorry, that was a mouthful, but I hope that gives further context. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question or a comment or anything they want to say about the project? It seems to have satisfied people's need for information, Brenda.
No, I think, you know, the reality is, especially how you're dealing with the offensive, you know, the offensive language and those types of things. We're dealing with that on a regular basis here, trying to figure out how to do that. So with your legal counsel, how is that relationship? Because that's what I'm trying to, I mean, we're having lots of conversations with our legal counsel on those types of things. So any advice on how it worked with them? Or, you know, sometimes they're coming back like, no, you cannot. And it's like, no, we need to represent this as it was, kind of. I kind of get more pushback on, you know, not including it, I guess.
My advice is make your manager do it. Michal?
There we go.
Well, I will say that, you know, I was the one who would have to I was managing the project, but what's really nice for me is that involved a lot of this difficult stuff. So that's why I've so thoroughly enjoyed Andrew's presentation, because I get to actually see, you know, what's come together. It's really nice. It's really worth it. It's worth the pushback.
Yeah.
You know, to be fair, we had initiated this project and we also approached them. I think perhaps, and there's a different kind of, there's different perhaps tensions or concerns and considerations, but this project has been very highly supported because of the fact that we are, you know, because of the way that it functions as a kind of model for collaborative engagement with the indigenous community, indigenous knowledge systems. I think for us, you know, we were kind of thinking like we have to just create the disclaimer and then ask them if they have a problem with it. And that's what we did. We essentially proposed to them that it would be more offensive to the community if we edited on the basis of a Western, even sort of classist kind of model of what names should or shouldn't be. There's a strong legacy. In fact, I think I had a conversation with someone today around the different names that people have had to take on. Historically, South African workers, say for example, African domestic workers, Black workers, who people who would essentially have to be, easy to answer for, would have to take on an English name. And I know quite a lot of young Black people now who will not accept if you call them by the English name, or people who have over time rejected that English name. It's essentially, we really just had quite a straightforward experience, but I'll be very honest with you, wait until we go live. This is untested waters. This is what we've proposed to our legal counsel. When I say that, I mean, to the legal services at the university. We also consulted with the research office. Maybe it's also an approach, is really bring in the academics.
Yep,
because
that's true.
We approached the research office and a specialist there on intellectual property law and generally around, issues of representation, because it also becomes the case of, what are the rights of people who are interviewed? I mean, it's not, obviously in South Africa, we have the Protection of Personal Information Act, which is something that's quite recent and we've had to adjust to it. So in this case, we've had to be very careful about ensuring that names that are in a local vocabulary of names that would be, readily accessible, that there has been as much buy-in from those people who are going to be in that. And also, digitization, one of the key problems that I would say, in terms of a holistic perspective, not just with regards to this project, but generally speaking, it can be hair-raising when you're not sure what ownership, who owns something, and when something has already been done, so publishing a letter which speaks to a third party that's quite offensive about that third party, or is perhaps a violation of rights. Now, if that's already on our website, but now suddenly there's an introduction of law that makes it a problem, how do we go about changing that? Do we just delete everything? Do we just take everything down? We had one instance where we took a collection down because we felt that it violated personal information, and we got enormous pushback from the people who had obviously wanted that project to be that showcase website to be up.
Are you talking about the
medical?
That wasn't a Papier issue, because I'm pretty sure the people involved were dead. The problem was it was medical pictures of naked Indigenous people.
This is
it was a problem, but the academics didn't like it when we took it down.
It was was Bassam. I think they were the academic who had specifically, who had been represented in it, I think was concerned about, having had the website taken down. But we had done it, and this is the point, is we had done it in consultation with the dean of that faculty, with the dean of the Department of Anatomy and Human Biology, because they also wanted to reevaluate the way that they were representing themselves, and I think that's something to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Also, Andrea has gone. Andrea is a poly intellectual in the sense that she's gone from archaeology to cataloging to audiovisual archiving to intellectual property law, and she's currently completing her thesis in intellectual property law, and specifically trying to understand, like, if you feel like, I can feel like a historian, as an archivist, like there's a gut feeling that something's wrong, something's off. And I think that's really what we're talking about here. What is offensive? And on the one hand, we have a sense of like something's offensive because you feel like it's wrong from an ethical perspective. But on the other hand, what is the legal standpoint? And how does one balance the two, which is why it's so wonderful to be able to engage with Andrea and be able to be like, and she's like, no, that's not personal information. That's not that, but it is this. So I think that's really the thing, is you want to be able to perhaps have maybe someone, maybe more familiar with the kind of all the different kind of laws that would get you what you want, or to be able to support that. Because even if it's considered unethical, whatever the case may be, is it illegal? I don't know if that helps. These are the kind of debates we've been having.
I think the debates are happening everywhere on that one. On those.
Indeed. I mean, I'm working on a project where we have to finally consider the fact that some documentations speak to the blacks and the whites, or whites and blacks, and that's not terminology that really goes down well in our society anymore. And you have to rethink how you're going to approach publicizing that material and how people will think about it when they actually read it or see it online.
Well,
So,
another thing is you also have to consider not just your local audience, but your international audience.
oh yes.
Because in South Africa, we have coloreds. And that is a very, very offensive term in America, I gather.
Yes.
But in South Africa, coloreds are not Black people. They are a separate group.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Library of Congress does have a subject heading for them. It's Cape Coloreds. But yeah, so
it's complex.
It's complex.
Indeed. Okay, anybody else? Shall we wrap it up, Brenda? What do you think?
If nobody else has any questions, we can. But really,
Nice
thank
to see Deb
you.
here as well. Hi, Deb.
She's the outgoing co-chair, so she's probably, you're just sitting here relaxing this meeting because you don't have to worry about anything. But no, but
Thank you for this. Thank you for this topic and for sharing out on your work. I'm really just sitting here absorbing the subject matter, and the cultural context is completely new to me from where I'm sitting in the States, and I just can appreciate the thoughtfulness that your team is bringing, and the care and relationships. So thanks so much. I don't have much that I can relate it to with the work that I do. I'm a little more behind the scenes working on systems, but I think, a lot of us have different roles in preservation. And one question that I do have, I mean, it seems that in caring for the archive, really, of this community, you had a solid partner with Hugh Brody, someone whose work I'm not familiar with, and my computer was canceling out. But it seems to me like having that partnership and that person as in a curatorial role was integral to making this project possible. It's just something that I noted, because there's a whole process before the aspects of the work and cataloging and presentation. It seems like there was a lot of care that also went into deciding what is the record and what, that curatorial piece. And I don't know if you want to add anything about that, since we do have a little bit of time. It's a place of curiosity for me, because this is all new.
As far as I know, Hugh Brody's retired. So he was very instrumental in putting the collection together, and also in the land claim case. And he was the representative when the collection came to UCT. But I'm pretty sure he's retired now. But as a linguist, he did quite a lot of work with Kerry, and Kerry also worked with Levi Namaseb, who was one of the people who was working with Hugh Brody on the collection. He's Levi Namaseb is from Namibia. And so Kerry, through them, had the community connections. So when as she was continuing to work on the transcripts, you know, she'd be getting in touch with us like, do you have the recording? Can I see this and so on. So she was our point of contact. Normally it would be the Hugh Brody, the donor or depositor. But in this case, it ended up being Kerry, who was kind of like his successor. So same sort of thing. And that's really great when we have it. And I don't think we could have done this project without it, because Kerry speaks Ngu, and I don't know anyone else who speaks Ngu. So that's fantastic. I'm not totally sure exactly how well this model is going to hold up for our other collections, because not all of our donors have that sort of community relationship. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But also it's not a lot of our collections are more sort of like a person's work rather than a community, which is what made this one really so special. So I think when we do work on similar collections, it's about finding that right person. In this case, if we didn't have Kerry, we'd have to go to, I want to say his name's David.
David, yeah. It's been a long time since you looked at the local vocab. I just wanted to also add to that. This is, I think, you know, we speak about at UCT, everybody speaks to the Blake and Lloyd collection. If anybody wants to learn more about it, I'll also provide a link. The entire collection is online. It's considered one of South Africa's, you know, sort of national assets, and is currently being considered as a protected collection. We're in the process.
Oh, nice.
But you know, the thing that's so interesting about it was in uncovering, and researching this from a library's perspective, we were able to start connecting the dots between the different collections, as if, you know, you have different researchers who study a subject, in this case a community or a set of communities. And so, you know, really I think really the thing here is about, you know, engagement between information scientists and academics, in this case, in a very hybrid model of a project, has yielded incredible results. You know, and it's been quite innovative because of necessity. We've had to adapt the way we represent the Indigenous communities.
And it was actually a really nice process, because Kerry would give a keyword from the transcript and I'd come back with, well, this is the closest Library of Congress I can get. And then she'd say, no, that doesn't work. And then I'd make some suggestions and she'd say, well, how about this and how about that? And sometimes I'd be like, what even is this? I don't understand this keyword. And she'd call the community, she'd phone them up or send them a message or whatever and get direct feedback from them of what exactly is this keyword supposed to represent, which I mean, I know metadata, I don't know linguistics, I don't know living in the desert. So being able to get direct feedback from people who actually know the subject is just fantastic. And I hope that's something we can get on all our projects going forward.
Yeah. There seems to be a wonderful intersection opening between information science and curation and curatorial work and preservation, to look after all these things that we treasure and want to protect for the future. So thank you. You guys are doing great work. When our next Cape Town, I'll come and say hi.
Hopefully we'll have a facility that you are able to visit.
That too, yes.
That sounds a bit grave. We are currently like we are indoors, I promise. We're
not working under a baobab.
No, we've moved to Mowbray. We've moved to a building, an office block. We've taken over a building that was actually luckily quite empty over lockdown. Yes. And we're currently reconstituting the collections. Unfortunately, we're not able to receive researchers, but we hope to in the future. So if you are in Cape Town, please do be in touch.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Certainly will do. Thank you very much, everybody. Brenda, shall we?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. Yes, I think we did well. In the running notes, you will see there are some links that we've posted that our colleagues have graciously shared with us.